What's up guys, Houndish here, and today is the day, my friends, where the Bungie 30th anniversary pack is coming to Destiny 2. And on the actual launch day, we do have a brand new trailer and some new info to sink our teeth into regarding the content. So we get to see some of the new activity stuff. As always, Bungie's trailers are pretty exciting. We see new rewards returning D1 weapons, like Matador, that should be interesting, and a lot of other stuff. So we're going to jump in, take a look, and break down what we've got to look forward to with the new content drop this week. As always, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Be sure to subscribe to the channel as we'll have plenty more to cover as well. But getting into it, we should initially take a look at the trailer in full, and then we'll talk about some of what we see.
Nothing escapes your life. Impressive, Guardian!
And so right there we have a pretty exciting trailer to talk a little bit about some of the stuff that we see. Initially we have a Guardian with a new helmet ornament right there, which is pretty awesome. As well as a new sword for the event, potentially a drop from the Dares of Eternity, and the first bits of gameplay that we see right here are from the 6-player matchmade activity. We see a Warlock and Hunter with some of the new Universal Armor Ornament sets, and the Hunter has the 1,000-yard stare from Destiny 1. And then we get a couple of clips of Guardians with the Thorn sets of armor, followed by some shots with some weapons which are pretty similar to some Halo-styled weapons. So got a hand cannon right here by the looks of it with a really crazy scope. Wasn't actually sure whether it was a sidearm or a hand cannon initially there. And then another very Halo-styled weapon right here in the form of the pulse rifle, especially with these kind of Halo-styled scopes, they're pretty cool. Then we have more very glamorous shots of Guardians with the new armor sets, and the Titan once again with that new sword. And in the next shot, we see a few Destiny 1 weapons. So the Warlock right there actually has the Matador, or the Mapador, as we called it in Destiny 1. And then we've got the Titan with the Ice Luna. And once again, some of the Halo-styled weapons. So a really cool mix of weapons that we're going to see. And of course, they're not like-for-like Halo weapons, but I suppose weapons in the style of Halo weapons. And we see a whole team of Guardians firing Galahorns at Atheon right here. And it does a bunch of devastating damage to nearby ads. And it's followed by clips of the dungeon. So of course, dungeon is Grasp of Avarice. There are some really funky new sparrows right there. And obviously there is going to be a kind of open section outdoors right here in the dungeon, potentially at the start. And we've got a sparrow with a Destiny 2 license plate, which is pretty awesome. Then some of the internal sections in the loot caves, and we can see the giant skull with a bunch of jumping platforms. So the dungeon is going to be really interesting. But also we have the Dares of Eternity activity. And we see Xur right here with the Star Horse, which I believe is actually what it's referred to as in some of the patch notes for a companion app update today, that suggests this is going to be a new visitable space, and Xur is going to have various bounties for players to pick up, and it'll probably be where we access the loot system for the new activity. And we can see it takes place in the Plains of the Nine. Some very interesting architecture there, and it looks like we'll be fighting a whole bunch of different enemies inside of this activity as well. Then finally, and of course very importantly, we have the treasure room, so we can see Xur is by the entrance. There appears to be a primary kind of reward chest, and then as we've discussed recently, a bunch of other chests that look to have kind of targetable loot drops. There's some more really cool images right here of Guardians with the various armor sets and weapons, and then a ton of Hive Knights with a kind of mini Crota boss, I'm not sure whether this is the 6-player activity or the dungeon, probably the 6-player activity. And finally, the display card right there for the anniversary event, which is pretty awesome. So overall, a really cool trailer, and I'm sure there's going to be even more for us to discover once it goes live as we get into the gameplay side of stuff. But then Bungie provide a bunch of extra screenshots. So we can see the Warlock right here, I believe with the Marathon themed armor set and the Ice Luna, as well as the Myth sword on their back. And they've got that awesome helmet ornament once again. The Galahorn themed Sparrow is right here, and there are various other images that we can see with Guardians in the treasure room. A Fallen boss that we can see here as well, potentially linked to the dungeon. It would appear that we've got Cosmodrome-esque architecture around them. Plus more images of what will probably be inside of the dungeon with plenty of Fallen architecture, so quite possibly a primarily Fallen dungeon there. Another really cool screenshot of the Star Horse, some Guardians doing emotes inside of the Cosmodrome caves, and some images right here that show the weapon set. So I believe these weapons are going to come from the 6-player match-made activity. Certainly looking pretty awesome, and once again, some very Halo-styled weapons. Interesting that there are also 2 variants of that sword, and then some which I believe are going to be linked to the dungeon more specifically, which are the D1 weapons and the Myth sword. And then Bungie provides some other really cool wallpapers with backdrops from the dungeon. So they all look really, really cool, and give us any thoughts you have about them down below. As we go into the launch today, if you want a quick roundup of weapons to take note of and certain buffs that we're going to see, for pellet shotguns, we're going to see that 10% PvE damage bonus, so it could be worth pulling out some of those. They're also reducing slug shotgun PvE damage bonus from 30 to 20%, so the pellet shotguns are really the ones getting the buff. Linear fusion rifles are also going to be worth playing around with. They're going to see an increase of 10% in PvE, and given the mods and setups we've already got, they're only going to get better right here in the update. But also caster swords are going to be worth playing around with, where they're reducing the heavy attack ammo cost from 8 to 5. And then for any bows that you enjoy using, remember that they're increasing damage versus rank and file enemies by 10%, which could also be pretty good if you've got any bows with things like Dragonfly. And then some of the sidearms and fusion rifles in the game may feel a little bit different, as they will all now be hit scan. Then on the exotic front, for fighting Lion, dealing any damage is going to grant the reload buff, and they're increasing the duration of that buff, so that could be fun to use as well as Arbalist for intrinsic anti-barrier, which is being added. Plus, the Sleeper Simulant is getting a PvE damage increase of 6%, as well as an increased magazine size from 3 to 4. So that could be decent for some DPS. And Soros Regime's dual mode receiver is getting a buff, with plus 30 points to range and plus 3 to zoom. There's also the rework for Cryesthesia 77k and variable trigger, and the weapon's going to fire on trigger press instead of release. Plus there are a couple of other buffs, and we've got things like the Leviathan's Breath Catalyst now granting Archer's Tempo in addition to its current effects. Whisper of the Worm seeing a buff with PvE damage increased by 10%. Plus White Nail will now pull 2 rounds from inventory and 1 from thin air, so that's going to be pretty good. And the Darcy is seeing a damage increase of 20% with reduced flinch recoil and accuracy degradation when the Personal Assistant perk is active. If you enjoy using Malfeasance, that's going to get increased explosion damage of 50%. That's going to be pretty good. Plus be sure to look out for the Full Auto Retrofit mod, which is a new weapon mod that's going to enable full auto on legendary hand cannons, sidearms, scout rifles, and pulse rifles, and will be unlocked by default for all players. Of course, then there are the ability changes, which we've broken down separately, and Bungie are going to post a full list of patch notes, which is going to be pretty significant. So all of that can be found on the Bungie news page, and otherwise, I will keep you posted with some of the new content later on, guys, when it drops. So I hope you found the video useful and interesting today. If you have, a rating below really does help us out. Also get subscribed and I will keep you up to date with everything related to the game. And otherwise, I hope you guys have an awesome day.